kiddies, greetings. I am Count Cyculist, and today I will be terrifying you and horrifying you with stories of road bike riders and cyclists that have lost their way and gone down an unfortunate path. No, don't cry. Don't cry, I'll give you something to cry about. Sit down, kiddies, sit down. I will not bite you. Count Cyculist has his own blood. He keeps it in the refrigerator in little baggies and on the team bus in Coca-Cola cans. Do not worry. Oh, you doubt my word. Well, behold. You see, Count Cyculist knows of what he speaks. Anyway, let's get on to the horrifying stories. For you will be trembling, and you think you'll be able to sleep tonight? You will not. Okay, kiddies. This is the first tale of terror. You think you will sleep tonight? You will not. The man with the custom bike. Once there was a man that bought a very expensive custom-made titanium bicycle. It was his pride and joy. He kept it in his room and stared at it for hours on end. One day on his weekly group ride, Group B, Group C, he thought he heard something odd. What was that? There was a slight squeak, a little rub, something askew. Eek, eek, eek. The low sound was almost muffled by the wind. Eek, eek, eek. There it was again. He asked another rider if he heard it, but he did not. Eek, eek, eek. What was it? When the man got home from his ride, he checked to see if anything was loose. He lubed his chain and tried to tighten his stem. But the sound was still there. He got on the internet to try and ask for help, but the comments he got proved fruitless. Eek, eek, eek. Finally, in desperation, the man completely stripped his bike to the bone, removing everything and relubing and repacking, cleaning and tightening until there was nothing left to clean and tighten. He was sure the problem had been fixed. The next week on his group ride, about a mile into the ride, he heard eek, 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 eek. The man tried to ignore it. Was it really there? How could it be? Eek, eek, eek. Sweat dripped down his brow, even though it was a cool morning. His eyes fixed in front of him, his gaze become glassy. Eek, 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 eek. The man could not take it any longer. Stopping in the middle of the road, he jumped off the bike and lifted it high above his head. Over and over, he pounded it into the ground with a wild frenzy. Eek, 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 the bike screamed as it was quickly reduced to a twisted pile of rubble. And that's the way they found him a few minutes later. The police rushed to the scene, and eventually he was carted away to the insane asylum. And there, 22 years later, he still sits, completely unresponsive. The doctors tried, but could never get any response. The A group from his ride showed up and tried to engage him, but to no avail. There he sits still today, motionless, staring into space in his small cell. And on a small portion of his wall, scratched into the aging plaster, in his own bloody fingernails, are the words, "I should have just bought a Trek." Horrifying! You see what he did there? He should have just bought a Trek, and not the expensive custom bike. Whoa! That'll horrify you all night tonight. Are you ready for the next tale of horrifying terror? Can you handle it? Sit down, don't cry. I told you I'd give you something to cry about. Sit down, that's what. Don't cry, kiddies. Don't cry. The next story is titled, "The Touring Cyclist Finds a New Home." Once there was a touring cyclist that rode many miles a day. Far from home, he would ride on multiple day trips, carrying a tent and provisions for all occasions. One day, in the middle of one such trip, the man encountered a horrible storm. As the rain pounded down, it soaked him through, lightning flashed, and he made for cover. He tried to pitch his tent, but the wind was too much for it. and it blew away into the night. At his wit's end, the hardy traveler got back on his bike and tried to ride the storm out. I've been there. Into the night he rode, but it was soon obvious that it was no use. He could go no further. What to do? He saw through the pelting rain a light off the road. He walked towards it and soon came upon a small farmhouse. He walked up the creaking, rickety stairs and sheepishly knocked on the front door. Soon the door creaked open, and a small, strange-looking little man peered from the half-open door. "Can I help you?" "Hello, sir. I'm sorry to bother you, but I was caught in the storm. And I know this is asking a lot, but could you offer me some shelter until the worst of this blows over?" The little man raised his eyebrow. Well, I'll make a deal with you. You can spend the night, but you have to promise not to touch my beautiful daughter." The biker quickly shook his head. "Oh, that's not going to be a problem. I lost all feeling in my crotch 500 miles ago." Do you see what he did there? He could feel nothing in his crotch. He don't have to worry about the daughter. Horrifying. Oh. No, don't cry. Don't cry, kiddies. Don't cry. No, kiddies. Don't worry. He just has to change the angle of his saddle and his crotch will be fine. Don't worry. Are you ready for the third tale of terror? Can you handle it? No, don't cry. Sit down. Be quiet. Sit down. This is called The Devil's in the Details. One day, a man was riding his bike merrily along one of his favorite routes. The birds were chirping and the sun was shining high in the warm summer sky. A song danced in the man's head. What was that, an old Pivo song? Suddenly, the bike jarred as it shifted by itself. Shocked, the man checked himself and rode on. But a few minutes later, the bike shifted again, without a lever ever being moved. Visibly shaken, the man turned for home, and when he'd reached his garage, he checked his chain. It looked fine. He pulled out his chain tool and found that the chain had stretched. Quickly, the man drove his bike to the local shop and asked them to put a new chain on. "No problem," said the tech. "I can get to it this week." 2 weeks passed, and the man heard nothing from the shop. He called to see what was wrong. "Well, we put a new chain on, but we noticed the cassette was worn. Would you like us to change that out?" The man was a bit perturbed, as his cassette was an expensive Dora-Ace and not really that old. But components do wear out, and he understood that. "Okay," he said, "go ahead and put a new cassette on." "Cool," said the mechanic. "I'll call you when it's done." Another 2 weeks had passed. How long does it take to put a cassette on? The man called the shop for a third time and inquired about his bike. "Well, some bad news, sir. We put the new cassette on, but it looks like your front chain rings are worn." "What?" The man said. "The cassette was bad enough. The crank was expensive and only a few years old." "Okay," said the man in frustration. "You change the chain, you change the cassette. If you change the chain rings, can you promise me the bike will shift perfectly?" Replied the tech. "Not really." "Why not?" said the man. "Well, it's not going to shift right with that big crack in the down tube." You see what he did there? He was selling him expensive components when the frame was trash. Horrifying. Horrifying. No, sit down. Sit down. Don't cry. You'll get a new bike. Sit down. Sit down. Okay, kiddies. Are you ready for your final tale of horrifying terror? I warn you, it is very dark. No, don't cry. Sit down. Stop crying. Okay, this is called Thou Shalt Not. Once upon a time, there was a man that would ride his bike to work. Every day on his way home, he would cut across a field near a large, old, spooky house. Sometimes he even thought he saw a light in the window of the frightening old house. One day at dusk, He was cutting across the field on his new gravel bike when he thought he saw a figure in front of him. Yes, it was a small wispy figure, and as he approached on his bike, he could tell it was a little girl. With sunken features and a tattered dress, the girl appeared to glare at him as he rode past. She said in a weak voice, "You're trespassing. Get off our property." Frightened by this apparition, the man pedaled strenuously until he cleared the field and rode with extra effort until he arrived home. The next day, after work, the man cut through the field as usual, only this time with a slight feeling of dread. As he approached the house, he saw another figure. No, not this time. This time there was two figures. Yes, one was a little girl. The other was much larger. A large, older man. His eyes looked glassy. The biker thought he had an ominous disposition. He pedaled quickly, breaking into a sweat as he rode past the two intimidating figures. "You are trespassing. Get off our property," they screeched in unison, sounding like the mythical harpies of old. The man shook deep inside. He pedaled furiously all the way home and ran to his bed and hid under his covers. The next day, the man cut across the field as was his habit. As he approached the area he had dreaded all day, he was surprised to see nothing. Nobody was there. The man pedaled a few more feet, relaxing into his pedal stroke and feeling eminently relieved. Bam! An explosive shot rang out from a shotgun, and the man lay bleeding in the field. It was there that he was pronounced dead. No charges were filed, as he was trespassing, and he was warned multiple times. You see what happened there? He was warned. And even on his gravel bike. Oh, horrifying! Horrifying! You think you will sleep tonight? I told you that was dark! I told you it was dark! You were warned. We will see you next time. This is Count Cyculist saying, pleasant dreams! Bye, kiddies!